I remember the first time I crossed that bridge. It was late, later than I should have been driving, and the fog curled around the edges of the road like smoke rising from something unseen. The street lamps flickered as though uncertain whether to stay awake, and the trees leaned inward, their branches whispering with every sigh of wind. I slowed my car, feeling the metal hum beneath my fingers, and listened. Nothing but the distant rush of water and the soft, irregular creak of the old wooden planks under my tires. I'd heard stories about this bridge, strangers vanishing, pale faces appearing in the fog, whispers carried across the river. But it was always a story I told myself to make the night feel alive, not dangerous. Tonight, though, the air tasted metallic and cold, and every instinct in me told me to stop, to turn around, to forget the bridge existed at all. Yet I couldn't. My headlights glared into the mist, illuminating shapes that shouldn't exist, and I felt a presence brushing against the edge of my mind. Then I saw it. Not in the road, not on the side, but in the fog itself, waiting, patient. A silhouette so still, yet somehow moving in the corner of my eye. I froze, breath held, heartbeat loud in the silence. That's when I realized I was not alone. The fog had settled thick over the road, curling along the edges of the tires, softening the world into gray silence. I could barely see beyond the headlights. The bridge appeared slowly, wooden planks emerging through the mist like broken teeth. Each one groaned beneath the car, a slow, uneven sigh that seemed almost alive. I slowed, feeling the vibration under my hands, the hum of the engine swallowed by the fog. Shapes moved at the corners of my vision, or maybe the fog was playing tricks. A shadow there. Gone when I blinked. I told myself it was just the mist, the way it shifted and stretched around the old timbers. The hum started then, low at first, almost comforting like the vibrations of a distant engine. It grew steadily louder, a soft pulse that seemed to come from beneath the bridge. I glanced down at the water. The river had a strange stillness, black and reflective, swallowing the dim light. At first, I thought it was my reflection, but the eyes weren't mine. They were pale, wide, watching from just beneath the surface. I jerked back, heart quick, but the car didn't falter. The bridge held. The hum thickened. It wasn't mechanical. It wrapped around me, pressed against my chest, as though the fog itself were breathing. I tried to focus on the planks, the grooves and knots, grounding myself. And then the shapes returned, more defined this time. Figures walking just out of reach, dissolving when I tried to look directly at them. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white. The fog closed in from all sides, swallowing the tail lights of the road behind me. Something brushed the side of the car. Soft, almost affectionate. I told myself it was a branch, but there was no wind. I felt it again. A light tapping against the metal, rhythmic, deliberate. The water rippled. A hand, or a shadow that mimicked one. I couldn't tear my eyes away. The hum shifted into a faint melody, uncertain but unmistakable, humming in tune with my own pulse. The planks beneath me seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting in time. I could hear the faintest whisper. It didn't speak words, but it carried a memory of something lost, something I'd forgotten I feared. The car moved slower, almost as if the bridge itself were guiding me. The mist grew heavier, thick enough to taste. A smell like wet wood and cold metal filled the air, clinging to my skin. I blinked, and for a moment, the figures were closer, standing on the edge of the bridge, pale faces indistinct, watching. The hum stopped. Abruptly, the silence that followed pressed against my ears. I wanted to speak, but no sound came. The river below was completely still. The water reflected. Nothing, and yet I could feel the eyes, always eyes. Following, I exhaled slowly, trying to convince myself it was just a trick of the fog. The bridge groaned one last time beneath the tires. The mist began to thin just enough to see the far edge. I crossed. The shapes dissolved, The hum faded, but the feeling stayed, cold and light as a shadow brushing the back of my neck. When I glanced back from the far side, the bridge seemed ordinary, empty, and yet, when I looked down into the water, something lingered, just beneath the surface, watching, waiting. I didn't look again, but the memory of its eyes followed me. Long after the fog had lifted, the bridge stretched over black water, slick with moonlight and mist. I walked slowly, my shoes pressing against the damp wood. A cold fog drifted up from below, curling around my ankles. Midnight had a way of making everything feel distant. Even the wind whispered, soft and hesitant, as if afraid to move too fast. I paused, listening to the hum of the river, quiet but insistent. Then I saw it. At the far end of the bridge, a figure stood. I froze, breath catching, heart stubbornly trying to keep pace. They didn't move like anyone should. Slow, deliberate, almost floating, though their feet touched the planks. The mist curled around them, hiding every detail, yet revealing the outline clearly. I wanted to turn away. I wanted to run, but my eyes clung. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong. The figure tilted its head just slightly, and I felt it. Eyes, on me. I couldn't tell if they were human, or something else wearing human shape. The fog seemed to pulse around them, alive. The wind shifted, and I caught a glimpse of pale skin. Not flesh exactly, more like moonlight pressed thin over bone. Their arms hung loosely, elbows bending at odd angles. A small rustle came from the cables above. I flinched. The figure didn't flinch. I tried to breathe slowly, counting the seconds. My ears hummed with the river's voice, the bridge's quiet groan. It was a sound that wanted to lull, not warn. Closer now, or maybe closer in my mind. I couldn't be sure. The fog played tricks, moving shadows along the railing. Each step I took echoed softly, soft footsteps that matched nothing behind me. I dared a glance down. The water swallowed all my reflections. Their shape shifted, almost folding in on itself. The mist thickened, hiding what I wanted to see, revealing what I feared. I wanted to speak. My throat only made a dry rasp. The figure raised one hand. Slowly, deliberately, pointing, not at me, but toward the center of the bridge. A warning, or an invitation. I stopped. My fingers grazed the railing, cold, smooth, and sticky with dew that smelled faintly metallic. Every instinct screamed again, but my body refused to obey. Something brushed against my sleeve. Not wind, not water. Soft, like a whisper of cloth or skin. I dared another look. The face remained hidden. The pale light from the moon behind clouds glinted faintly off something. Eyes or mirrors? I couldn't tell. A sudden silence fell. The river's hum stopped. Even the fog held its breath. I realized I hadn't moved for what felt like hours. My heart drummed. I thought of stepping backward, but each plank seemed endless beneath me. And then they moved. Not forward, not away, but in a way that made the bridge seem to tilt under my gaze. Each step impossible yet inevitable. The mist swirled higher. I blinked. When I opened my eyes again, they were closer. Closer than reason allowed. The air tasted of rust and something sweeter. Older. I could almost hear the slow, soft pulse of their presence in my chest. I wanted to call out. My voice failed. A shiver ran down my spine, and my skin prickled with static. A shadow flickered. Not theirs. Something crouched low beneath the bridge, blending with the fog. I couldn't see it clearly. I didn't want to. The figure raised both hands now. Slow, curling, almost gentle. I understood nothing, yet the warning was absolute. I stepped back. Plank groaned. The fog thickened. My shoes were wet. My legs felt heavy, and then, as if slipping through a dream, they began to fade. The mist swallowed the outline entirely. I blinked once, twice. Only the empty bridge remained. The fog curled at my feet, restless. The river whispered again. I stayed until the pale figure didn't return. But I could feel them, somewhere, watching, always just beyond the reach of the light. The fog rolled over the bridge again tonight, thick and wet, curling around the railings, filling the spaces between the wooden planks. I could barely see the end, where the river swallowed the shadows whole. Soft voices floated across the mist. At first I thought it was the wind. Then I realized they weren't random. Children laughing. Or crying, I couldn't tell which. They swirled around me, too distant to locate. I stepped forward. The planks groaned under my weight. Each footstep swallowed by the fog, each breath trembling in my chest. The voices shifted. Closer now, just beyond the reach of my sight. I reached out, and the mist brushed my fingers like pale silk. A rustling sound came from the railings. Static prickled through my ears, high and sharp. I froze, heart thudding. Blood buzzing, I moved again. The voices darted, playful and cruel, guiding me further. I tried to catch them in my eyes. Always gone. The bridge seemed longer than before, each plank creaking under doubt. The fog pressing closer, thickening with every hesitant step. I heard it then, a whisper, soft, beneath the hum of the river. It carried my name. I spun, breath sharp. Nothing but fog and shadow. Yet the voices had multiplied, layered like a strange choir. Something shimmered in the distance, a pale light flickering low, like a lantern that had lost its fire. I thought I saw movement, a small figure standing beyond the curve of the bridge. Static rose again, sharp in my ears. My own heartbeat faltered, drowned beneath it. I wanted to run, but my feet felt rooted. The fog shifted. The light disappeared. A single shadow remained, impossibly tall, stretching along the wooden planks. I whispered back. No words, just breath trembling, trying to anchor myself. The shadow responded, not with sound, but with motion. Soft footsteps echoed behind me. Quick, light, but not mine. I dared not look. The river below swelled, lapping at the pillars. Its murmur matched the voices now. A rhythm, a warning. The bridge groaned as though it remembered my weight. The fog thickened further, hiding everything I thought I knew. I realized then that the voices weren't ahead. They had always been around me. I tried to focus. A child's laugh too sharp. A sigh, long and hollow. I couldn't separate them from my own fear. The pale light flickered again, near the far end of the bridge. I stepped closer. The wooden boards felt alive, soft beneath my shoes. Static filled the air completely. I wanted to scream. Instead, I whispered back into the fog, "Who's there?" Silence. For a heartbeat, the mist held still. Then came a soft reply, almost inaudible, as if it were breathing through the fog itself. I felt drawn forward. A pull in my chest, a weight in my lungs. Each step echoed, swallowed, echoed again. The shadow moved with me now, always at the edge of vision, never clear but unmistakably present. I reached the lantern's flicker. It was nothing but a trick of light, a reflection in the river. Yet the whisper lingered, circling me like smoke. I turned back. The bridge was empty. No footsteps, no shadow. Just the fog, thick and unyielding. A single laugh floated from beneath the planks. High, brittle, like cracking porcelain. It circled once, twice, and vanished. The static receded. Silence pressed in. I leaned against the railing, hands cold, breath shuddering. I thought I was alone. But the fog moved differently now, shifting, curling, alive. I felt eyes on me. Not human, not child, not entirely there. Just awareness. Watching. Waiting. Soft footsteps passed behind me, quick and deliberate. I didn't turn. I couldn't. The bridge stretched endlessly into fog. The voices had gone, or perhaps they had just hidden. I couldn't be sure anymore. The river whispered under the planks, carrying secrets I could not reach. I stepped forward, hoping to leave. The mist pressed tighter. A pale light shimmered far ahead. Not quite a lantern, not quite a star. Something waiting. I paused. The air smelled of wet wood and distant rain. I thought I heard my name one last time, carried softly through the fog. I didn't move. I let the silence wrap around me, cold and patient, and waited as the mist kept its secrets, as the bridge held its shadows. The night was fog-thick, curling over the asphalt like smoke that wouldn't leave. I drove slow, headlights cutting through the mist, the hum of the engine louder than the world around me. The bridge loomed ahead, pale and slick under the moonlight, suspended over dark water that didn't ripple. Cars passed me at first, their red taillights brief pinpricks in the fog. And then they weren't there anymore. One moment they were moving forward. One moment the road was empty. I blinked. Tire marks lingered where they had been, pressed into the wet asphalt, but they led nowhere. I pressed harder on the gas. The bridge stretched, longer than it should be, wider. Each span of road felt endless, a corridor through a world that had no edges. The fog thickened at the corners of my vision. Shadows of streetlights leaned sideways. Something in the air smelled faintly of rust and water, of metal left to rot in stillness. I glanced down at my speedometer. It read numbers that didn't make sense. I had been on this bridge for minutes that felt like hours, but the numbers hadn't moved. A soft tapping began. Not on the car, not on the glass, but behind me, like footsteps that shouldn't exist in a place where no one could follow. I forced my eyes forward. The bridge shivered beneath me. A stretch of rail twisted impossibly high, then dipped into nothingness. Wind whispered against the side mirrors. The hum of the engine grew hollow. My hands gripped the wheel tighter, and the air seemed to pulse around me, slow, deliberate. Another set of headlights appeared, far away at first, then closer. But as they approached, they flickered, then vanished, leaving only empty road. I tried to turn back. The bridge had no end behind me, only the path I had taken, dissolving in fog, the asphalt beneath my tires dissolving into a gray void. The bridge felt alive. Beneath the tires it stretched and yawned, a slow, waking thing that measured me, pulled me farther from everything I knew. I reached the midpoint. The water below was black glass, smooth and deep. I leaned out the window, catching glimpses of shapes that weren't water at all, faces, twisted and pale, frozen beneath the surface, staring up. A sound rose from them, low, vibrating, as if the bridge itself was speaking through the fog. I pressed my hands to my ears, but it sank inside, echoing in my chest. The air became thick. I could taste it, iron and wet stone. Every step my tires took seemed heavier than the last, and yet I couldn't stop. I saw another car ahead. It sat motionless, lights dim. The driver's door was open. Inside, nothing moved, but I could feel eyes watching, though no one was there. I slowed. The tires sank slightly as if into wet sand. The bridge hummed around me, a sound that matched my heartbeat, sinking, pulling, binding. I wanted to reach the other side. I wanted it to end, but the end never came. Everything stretched. Time dilated. I felt suspended in a tunnel of gray, neither here nor anywhere else. I thought I saw a hand on the wheel beside me, a pale hand. But when I turned, nothing was there. Only the bridge stretching, only the fog. My headlights caught something moving in the distance. A figure, tall, ragged, shifting, closer yet never closer. It didn't walk. It floated just above the road. I blinked again. It was gone. The bridge remained, endless. I tried to call someone. The phone was dead. No signal, no reception. Just the hum of the tires on the asphalt and the soft, constant whisper of wind through rails. I drove slower, then stopped. Brakes protested. The car settled into nothingness. I stepped out. The fog swallowed me. I couldn't see the edges, the water, the beginning, or the end. I listened. Nothing but the faint, strange pulse beneath the asphalt. I took a single step forward, and the bridge shifted under me. A sigh of metal. I froze. The fog thickened, and then the world was empty, save for the soft stretch of road that should not exist, leading forward, always forward. The fog had settled before I even reached the road. It clung to the ground, thick and soft, muffling the world. I could see the outlines of the trees, skeletal and still. Branches scraped the car windows. Slowly, almost lazily, like fingers tracing glass. I pressed my palms against the steering wheel, trying to ignore it. A shadow flickered at the edge of my vision. Gone before I could look directly, the headlights barely cut through the haze, just a pale ribbon of light. I thought I saw movement between the trunks, a figure hunched watching, or maybe the fog played tricks on me, curling and bending shapes I didn't understand. The radio hummed quietly, filling the silence I couldn't bear. Static whispered at the edges, soft syllables I couldn't make sense of. A cold draft slipped under the door, brushing against my neck. Something shifted behind a tree. Not fast. Not sudden, just there. I held my breath. Branches scraped again, higher this time, tapping against the roof like nails. I could hear the leaves rustle, though there was no wind. A pale face appeared in the mist. Pressed against a trunk, eyes wide and hollow. It moved with the fog, stretching and thinning as if it didn't belong to the air. I blinked. It was gone. But another waited closer, pale as ash, staring from just beyond the headlights. I tried to convince myself it was someone, anyone, lost. But the shapes kept shifting, faces forming, then disappearing, pressed against the drifting fog. Soft, wet whispers tickled the edges of my mind. The car shuddered. Nothing mechanical. Just the branches, leaning and twisting, bending toward the windows. I lowered the beam of light, hoping not to see, hoping it would leave me alone. I glimpsed it again, moving alongside the car. No footsteps, no sound, only a suggestion of motion. The shadows pooled around the trunks, stretching, curling. Like the earth itself had decided to rise, a hand, or something like one, tapped on the roof. Light, pale, almost transparent, pressing through the thin metal. I froze. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I could only watch as the fog thickened, swallowing the road behind me. A rustling, louder this time, circled the car. Or maybe it stayed still and I was moving. I couldn't tell which way was safe. Faces pressed close to the glass. They didn't blink. They didn't move with me, just stared. I shut my eyes. The rustling didn't stop. It became more deliberate, scraping along the hood, down the sides. I imagined reaching for the door. A wrong move. It would know. The headlights caught another shadow. Tall, thin, bending unnaturally. It paused just outside the circle of light, waiting. I couldn't look. I wanted to, but my chest locked itself. Even the static in the radio seemed to quiet, leaving only the faint breathing of the fog. I started the car. Slowly. Every shudder of the engine seemed to echo against the shapes outside. I moved a few feet. The shadows kept pace. I could see their faces in the mist, pale and urgent, pressing close to the glass. Then suddenly, one was gone. Then another. The rustling softened, as if the fog itself sighed. I didn't stop the car. I didn't look back. I drove through the pale light of the fog, the branches scraping until they finally faded behind me. But even now, when I close my eyes, I see them. Faces pressed against the mist. The soft, wet rustle of movement just beyond my sight. And sometimes, when the wind is still, I swear I hear them again. Patient. Waiting. Just beyond the fog. The road was empty. The night pressed in around me, thick and heavy. Fog clung to the edges of the headlights, curling in soft, lazy spirals. I had been driving for hours. Miles of dark, the yellow line winking and disappearing beneath the mist. Every turn felt the same. The headlights flickered. A brief stutter, a shiver of light. Then they died. Everything went black. Only the hum remained, low, vibrating inside my chest and behind my eyes. I reached for the wheel, fingers trembling. The dashboard was dead. No light, no click, no life. I thought I saw something move. At first, just a shadow, pale and thin, like smoke caught in a breeze. But then, it stepped into the road, a figure. It did not reflect the faint moonlight or the street lamps I couldn't see. It was pale, almost glowing, humming in the darkness. I blinked. The car's interior felt suddenly small. The air itself seemed to hum as if it had been waiting for me. My hands shook, gripping the wheel tighter. The figure didn't move toward me. It didn't move away, it just stood there. The fog thickened. It curled around the tires, pressing against the windows. I could hear something, soft, against the metal. A rustling, like paper brushing against the floor. I tried the horn. Nothing. Only the hum, steady and deep, vibrating through my teeth. I breathed, shallow and quick. And then I saw it more clearly. Its skin was pale, almost translucent. No features. Only a suggestion of a face. Eyes empty and dark. I tried to start the engine. Click. Nothing. The hum grew louder, filling the car. It wasn't just sound. It was a pressure crawling beneath my skin. The figure tilted its head, slowly, almost lazily, and I realized it wasn't looking at me. It was looking through me. The road stretched endlessly behind it. Fog and darkness. No other light. I reached for the door. The handle was cold. I could feel the vibration in the metal, in the air, as if it were alive. Something moved in the corner of my eye. A flicker of static in the darkness. I turned my head, heart pounding. Nothing there. Then a soft sound. A whisper almost beneath the hum. I couldn't understand it, but it felt familiar. Like a memory I had tried to forget. The figure took a step closer. Still silent. The lightless shape grew larger. The fog swirled around it, dancing, alive. I wanted to scream. My throat tightened. The hum, the whisper, the shadow, it filled me. I leaned back in the seat. Closed my eyes, breathe. When I opened them again, it was closer. So close now that the fog bent around it. Its edges blurred, moving in soft, unnatural ways. I could see my reflection in the windshield. Pale, wide-eyed, shaking, and behind me a shape. Impossible, luminous, humming. Time slowed, or maybe it stopped. I couldn't tell the difference anymore than a faint flicker. The headlights, a brief pulse of light, enough to catch the shape, and it was gone. The fog remained. The hum softened. The air still vibrated, quiet, patient. I stayed frozen, listening, afraid to move. The road ahead was empty again. Only the mist lingered. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I feel the hum return. Soft, pale, waiting. The fog lay thick across the bridge, curling like smoke along the cracked asphalt. It was just past midnight. The air smelled faintly of rust and wet concrete. I parked at the edge, drawn by something I couldn't name. The toll booth stood there, pale and silent. Its windows were clouded, but a faint hum lingered inside. Electric, though nothing should have been running. I stepped closer. My boots whispered against the gravel. The hum grew, low, insistent, almost a voice. A ledger sat on the counter, leather cracked and brittle. I opened it. The pages were yellowed, curling at the edges. Names scrawled across them in looping, hurried script. And then I saw it. My name. A shiver rose along my spine. I blinked, hoping my eyes were lying. But there it was, inked beside a date I didn't recognize. The booth felt smaller somehow, walls pressing closer. A single light flickered, pale and unsteady, casting shadows that leaned toward me. The hum pulsed in time with my heartbeat. I traced my fingers over the letters. The ink felt slightly wet. Or maybe it was my own hand sweating. A rustling behind me made me freeze. Nothing moved. The bridge was still, yet the air had weight, pressing against my chest. I could hear faint footsteps, soft, deliberate. Retreating into the fog, I stepped back, almost tripping over a broken barrier. The hum changed pitch, rising just a fraction, almost a sigh. I wanted to turn away, but something rooted me to the spot. The ledger shifted, as though a breeze had passed through the booth. Names rearranged themselves, flowing across the page, rewriting history, and my name remained staring back at me. Outside, the fog thickened. It swallowed the bridge, leaving the booth a pale island in a sea of gray. I could see nothing, hear nothing, yet the hum never faltered. I leaned closer to the glass, pressing my face against the chill. A shadow passed behind the counter, slow, deliberate. I couldn't see a figure, only the faint distortion of light against darkness. Then, silence. The hum vanished, leaving a vacuum that pressed my ears painfully. I realized I had been holding my breath. A single page fluttered in the ledger. It landed on a name I didn't recognize. And beneath it, my signature, though I had never written it. I stepped back, heart hammering, fog curling around my legs. The toll booth seemed to exhale, a quiet settling of dust and air. Electricity thrummed faintly under my skin, cold, almost alive. Something whispered through the fog, brushing against my consciousness. A memory? A warning? I couldn't tell. It left me trembling, yet strangely compelled. The bridge stretched ahead, endless and gray. I wanted to walk, to leave, but my feet refused. The ledger seemed to watch me, waiting. I ran my hand over the glass again. The booth's hum returned, faint, melodic, like the pulse of a distant heart. I thought I saw movement, tiny shadows curling under the light. Names flickered on the pages as I stared. Old, new, familiar, strangers and echoes of myself. The air smelled of ink, metal, and something older, forgotten. I could feel the electricity in the walls, in the hum, in the ledger. It was alive, waiting for someone to notice, someone to remember. I wondered how long it had been waiting. For me, perhaps. The fog rolled tighter around my ankles. I took a step back, then another. But my name lingered, carved into the quiet, impossibly permanent. The bridge disappeared behind the mist. The booth remained, hum steady, ledger open. I left without looking back, though I could still feel it watching. The hum followed me in memory, quiet at first, then persistent. Even now I can hear it in the corner of a room, behind the hum of a refrigerator, beneath the static of a distant radio. And sometimes, when I'm alone, I swear I see the pale light of that toll booth through my bedroom window. It waits, and it remembers. The bridge stretched across the river like a thin, trembling line of wood. Night had settled early, swallowing the edges of the forest. Fog clung to the surface of the water, drifting in slow, curling breaths. I stepped forward. Each plank groaned beneath my weight. The sound was hollow and familiar. A chill slid along my arm. I froze. Nothing. The wind whispered, and it felt closer than the trees. I turned my hand over, empty, but the skin tingled as though it had touched ice. My reflection in the dark water below rippled oddly, like the surface had a memory of its own. The bridge shivered beneath me, soft, almost like a sigh. A pulse in the wood that matched the pulse in my chest. I told myself it was nothing. The fog would do that, play tricks with shapes and shadows. Yet the air seemed heavier here, almost waiting. A movement in the corner of my eye. I snapped my gaze toward the handrail. There was no one, only the dark river swallowing the banks. I forced another step forward. The planks flexed and moaned. Something scraped lightly along my sleeve. A pale light reflected off the water. My reflection, my own face, smiled back. But I hadn't. My stomach tightened. I stared at the eyes. They were mine, and not mine. The bridge shook again. I gripped the rail. The wood trembled with a hollow hum, like it remembered every footstep ever taken. The air tasted like metal. A soft brushing passed my elbow. Again, nothing there, and yet the skin beneath my shirt crawled. I looked down. The water mirrored me too well now. Each motion was slower, deliberate. My hands moved on their own, twisting, as if reluctant to belong to me. A low creak ran along the bridge. The sound echoed in the fog. It wasn't the planks, it was coming from inside me. I tried to breathe steadily. The mist caught in my throat. It whispered something I could almost understand, soft syllables of warning that left a residue of fear. The reflection's smile lingered. A whisper of a shiver passed over its lips. The eyes. They knew something I didn't. I stepped backward. The bridge didn't complain. It hummed, soft and resonant, as if acknowledging the hesitation. I pressed my palm to the wooden rail. Cold. Not the night cold, but something else. Deeper, like old frost trapped in the grain. I glanced down again. The water pulsed faintly, dark veins of shadow crawling under the surface. My reflection stayed. Watching, waiting. A soft footstep echoed behind me. I told myself it couldn't be real. I was alone, but the air stiffened. The hairs along my neck rose like the bridge itself was listening. The reflection twisted subtly, head tilting, observing. I could no longer distinguish the water from the wood beneath my feet. Every plank seemed to flex against me now, alive and patient. I whispered to myself, though my voice sounded foreign. You're not real. But the reflection's lips moved in perfect unison. The brush against my arm came again. I flinched, heart pounding. No one was there. Only the faint echo of steps I didn't take. I leaned over the rail, trying to force the water to betray its secret. It shimmered with a stillness that felt deliberate. The fog blurred my edges. I could not tell where I ended and the reflection began. A shiver ran down my spine. Cold settled deep into bones I didn't know I had. The bridge beneath whispered softly, like it was speaking just to me. I felt it then. The pulse, my pulse, matching the rhythm of the planks. Each step I took was mirrored in hesitation, each breath reflected in a silent echo. I stopped. The fog thickened. The reflection leaned closer. Its eyes held a patience older than the river, a curiosity I could not return. The brushing ceased. Silence fell, thick and almost solid. I exhaled, slow and careful. The reflection mirrored nothing now. It waited. The bridge swayed gently. Nothing moved in the water. And yet I felt it. A presence, a soft insistence that I was never entirely alone. I stepped off the first plank toward solid ground. The fog swallowed my legs. The woods sighed behind me, and in the corner of my eye the reflection lingered, pale and patient, watching the part of me I thought I had left behind. The river was quiet tonight. A soft fog pressed against the banks, curling into the trees like slow smoke. Moonlight barely touched the surface, leaving everything in dark silver. I leaned over the edge, boots brushing damp wood. The air smelled of wet moss and old stone. A shiver moved along my spine, though the night was still. Ripples formed across the water. Regular. Precise. Too deliberate to be natural. I blinked. The dark shimmered. Something moved beneath, subtle, measured. I told myself it was a fish. A branch falling, but my gut knew otherwise. The surface broke, just enough. A pale gaze stared up at me, unmoving, patient. I froze. The eyes were human, or almost. Too still, too certain, the water reflected them back. Not the moon, not the sky. Just the stare, anchored and cold. My breath caught. I wanted to look away, but my body wouldn't obey. The river pulsed lightly, like it had a heartbeat. Ripples expanded outward, carrying something with them I couldn't name. I crouched lower, hands gripping the railing. The eyes stayed silent and unblinking. I tried to count the seconds, but time seemed to pause in that gaze. A shadow moved beneath the surface, slowly, almost shyly. The shape was wrong, too elongated, too liquid to be entirely human. I leaned closer. The fog pressed into my face. It smelled faintly of salt, of old earth, of something forgotten. A soft brush of movement near my ankle. Cold water lapped the pier. My reflection shimmered strangely, fractured by the ripples. The eyes didn't flinch, I whispered to myself. You're not real. But the gaze remained. Still. Waiting. The ripples thickened. A line circular, precise. It moved against the current, deliberate, searching. I felt my pulse sink with the motion. It wasn't fear exactly, more a deep, curious dread. Like the river had offered a question, and I was the only one who could hear it. I crouched lower. The water glistened like black glass. Something passed beneath it, brushing the surface. Not a shadow, not a fish, not anything I could name. A flicker of pale skin. The eyes resurfaced. Closer this time, breaking the reflection into fragments. I swallowed. The air was thick with silence, dense enough to touch. Something cold touched my hand. I jerked back. Nothing. The water was calm again. But the feeling lingered. A subtle insistence that someone or something was watching. Ripples formed again. Slow, regular like breaths. The eyes emerged, barely breaking the waterline. They held me. I leaned closer. The mist swallowed my shoulders. I could see faint shapes beneath, skin pale and unmarked, body suspended in a quiet liquid patience. I blinked. The reflection of the moon was gone. Only the stare remained, anchoring me to a quiet horror I could not name. A soft pulse ran through the water, gentle but deliberate, like it was marking time. I wanted to run. I wanted to step back into solid ground, but I stayed. Curiosity pinned me even as my chest grew tight, even as the chill crept into my bones. The eyes did not leave. They shimmered beneath the surface, and I realized they were not alone. Other eyes followed, pale, patient, still. The river had become a mirror, and I was the intruder. I exhaled slowly, letting the fog fill my lungs. The water calmed. The ripples vanished, and yet the gaze lingered just below the surface, watching. I stepped back from the edge. The wood moaned softly beneath my weight. The fog embraced me. The eyes waited, patient and pale beneath the quiet black water. The road was empty. A thin fog lingered over the asphalt, clinging to the edges of the trees. It was late, later than I should have been driving, but the quiet drew me forward. I first saw them as a shadow at the roadside. Thumb raised, frozen in place. I slowed instinctively, my headlights spilling over their figure. At first I thought it was someone I'd passed before, a stranger. But something familiar tugged at the back of my mind. I couldn't place it, and that thought tightened around my chest. The air changed as I approached. It wasn't just cold. It was a hollow, seeping cold, wrapping around my bones like water. I stopped. The engine hummed softly, the tires crunching in the thin layer of frost on the pavement. They didn't move. Not an inch. I tried to make out their face. Something in the pale light? A curve of lips, the tilt of a head. I blinked and the features seemed wrong. Yet familiar. I rolled the window down. A faint rustle answered. Not the wind. Something smaller, sharper. Deliberate. Do you need a ride? I asked. The words felt wrong leaving my mouth. They didn't answer. Their eyes. I couldn't tell if they were looking at me or through me. The fog pressed closer and I shivered. A crow's wings beat somewhere in the trees. It startled me enough to glance away for a heartbeat. When I looked back, the figure hadn't moved. I reached for the door handle. I wanted to open it, to invite them in, to dispel the cold. Something stopped me. An instinct older than reason. The streetlights flickered. A soft static hummed through the air. It grew louder, but not a sound, more like pressure tightening around my skull. I squinted at the figure. The hair caught the light, silver at the edges. The shape of their coat, a pattern I knew, and then I saw it. A scar on the wrist, small, almost invisible, but I knew it. I couldn't remember when, couldn't remember where, but my mind screamed recognition, and with it, a pulse of dread. The car felt suddenly too small, too bright, too warm. Outside, the world had slowed. The fog hung heavier. I swallowed hard. The figure didn't move. Not a shift, not a breath. I tried to speak again. Do you need help? The words sounded hollow. Even to me, the air grew colder, and then warmer, and colder again, like something invisible was breathing over me. I looked around. The trees leaned closer, their branches clawing at the fog. A soft scratching on the windshield, or perhaps the roof. The headlights caught their eyes. Not the reflective gleam of strangers, but a pale, endless depth. I couldn't look away. I stepped back instinctively, but my foot caught the edge of the curb, a sharp pain burning in the ankle. I stumbled, but they didn't move. I swallowed. The voice in my head whispered, unbidden, I know you. I froze. I didn't want to look. The fog curled around the hood of the car. A shape formed, stretching just beyond the lights. I could feel it leaning closer just outside the glass. I wanted to start the engine. I wanted to drive away and never look back. But something kept me still. Their eyes were pale, patient. Not human, not yet, maybe never. The recognition prickled under my skin. The streetlights buzzed again, flickering unevenly. The world held its breath. And in that silence, I thought I saw them smile. I tried to call out. My voice caught somewhere between my chest and the windshield. Only a faint rasp emerged. I blinked, and the figure was unchanged. Still, waiting. The fog began to rise, curling higher. It swallowed the edge of the road, the trees, the sky above. The figure didn't move. I took a deep breath. The cold cut deep, sharp as glass, and yet I couldn't bring myself to leave. Somewhere far off, a crow cawed. The sound bounced off the fog, small and brittle. A warning, perhaps, or just a note in the quiet. I reached for the keys again. The engine hummed softly. The world outside the car felt distant, unreal. I glanced back once more. They were still there. Always there. The fog thickened. The air trembled with a hush I couldn't name, and I knew without turning that they were following, not walking, not running, but present. The road stretched ahead, empty, and yet I felt the weight of their gaze on my shoulder. I drove, slowly, too slowly, the headlights cutting through the fog, the cold pressing in. And somewhere behind me, or perhaps beside me, the thumb stayed raised, and I remembered. The fog lay heavy across the river. It muffled everything, My footsteps, the wind, even the distant hum of the road behind me. I had come to the bridge just before dusk. The wooden planks felt hollow under my weight, each step a soft groan. A lantern appeared ahead, swinging gently, alone. No figure, its light spilled pale over the rails, reaching out, then retreating into the mist. I stopped. Breath caught somewhere in my chest. The lantern swung again. Closer this time, or maybe it was me moving forward. I wasn't sure. I could see shapes in the fog, shadowed outlines that resembled people, watching, waiting. When I blinked, they were gone. The bridge shivered beneath a gust of wind. A rustling came from below, water brushing the supports, whispering against the wood. The lantern moved, no rhythm, no hand guiding it. A soft light glimmered in the fog like a heartbeat. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. The shadows returned. This time taller, closer. They seemed to bend toward me, stretching, then dissolving when I tried to step forward. I thought I heard breathing. Not mine. Something deliberate, measured, and just beyond reach. The river smelled of wet stone and decay. Fog clung to my clothes. My hands were damp before I realized I was touching the rail. The lantern swayed faster. Soft footsteps followed in its wake. But every time I turned, nothing moved behind me. A wooden plank creaked sharply. I froze. The shadow nearest the lantern lifted an arm, almost human. Then, nothing. I took a cautious step. The fog thickened. It pressed against my skin. The lantern paused, swinging gently in one spot, and then drifted sideways, as though carried by an unseen hand. A low hum rose from the river. It vibrated through my teeth, through my bones. I wanted to leave, but the lantern seemed to beckon me. Shadows flickered along the railings. Faces formed, pale, expressionless, familiar in some impossible way. When I leaned in to see, they blurred into nothing. The fog shifted. I could almost feel it brushing over my cheeks, whispering something I could not hear. I realized I was holding my breath. A soft step behind me. I didn't dare look. Another followed. The lantern's light trembled. I sensed movement around it, circling, hesitant. Not human, but not completely unlike it. I edged forward. Wood groaned beneath me, each step louder than the last, echoing in the empty space. The fog seemed alive, stretching tendrils toward me, curling around my ankles, my arms. The river hid beneath a silver sheet. Everything else faded into white. The lantern swung one final time. Slow, gentle, deliberate. Then it stopped. Silence. I could feel the shadows pressing closer, their shapes faint and trembling. No face, no eyes, just presence. And still the lantern did not move. I whispered my own name. It sounded alien to me. I repeated it, softer as if testing the air. Nothing answered. Or perhaps everything did. A shiver passed through the fog. Through the bridge. Through me, I stepped off the planks, onto solid ground. The lantern stayed suspended in fog. Its light swaying gently, I turned. It didn't follow. The shadows did not move. Only the river hummed quietly, endlessly. I kept walking, every step fading. But the lantern lingered in my mind. Swinging softly in the fog, I don't know who or what was holding it. And maybe I don't want to. It waits, always. On the bridge, in the fog, waiting for someone to come close enough to see the shapes in its pale light. And perhaps, just perhaps, for someone brave enough to reach out. The highway was empty. A thin fog curled along the asphalt, softening the glow of the streetlights. I leaned back in my seat, letting the hum of the engine fill the silence. My hand rested on the radio dial. It was late enough that the world felt paused. I should have turned it off. Static. A low hissing whisper under the usual white noise. I frowned. The station had gone dead hours ago, then words. Soft, almost hesitant, like someone speaking from another room. My name, I froze. No one could know I was out here alone. But it had said my name. The bridge appeared ahead, pale in the fog. Its railings glinted faintly, wet with mist. I slowed the car, listening. The whispers grew clearer. Fragments of conversation I couldn't place. Questions I'd never asked. Confessions I didn't remember making. I turned the dial. Nothing. Silence. Then, louder. Closer. A laugh, almost familiar, fading into static. It felt impatient. I pressed the button to switch to another station. The voice followed. Now it was speaking in full sentences. I could hear the creak of chairs, the scrape of shoes against a floor. I blinked, heart slow but insistent. The bridge stretched endlessly. Each meter forward seemed longer than the last. The fog thickened, swallowing the taillights of my car. The hum of the engine felt sharp, intrusive. I reached for the volume. The whispers stuttered, shifting rhythm. It was almost a dialogue. Questions I didn't recognize. Accusations softly drawn out. I looked to the passenger seat. Empty, of course. But the static lingered, brushing against the edges of my thoughts. A shadow moved across the fog. Brief, pale. I thought it might be another car, but there was none. The whispers became breaths, cold, uneven. Close enough that I could feel them brush against my ear. I wanted to stop, to throw the radio from the window, but the voice wouldn't let me. It pulled me forward, across the bridge. The water below caught the dim streetlights. Black, patient. The fog seemed to rise from it, curling higher, touching the edges of the windshield. I slowed again. The car seemed heavier. Every movement sluggish, unnatural. Then a pause. Complete silence. The engine, the bridge, the fog, all gone in a blink. And then a whisper just behind my seat. Don't look. I didn't, but I could feel it. The shape of it, pressed against the air. The radio returned, now only static. But the pattern was deliberate, pulsing, like a heartbeat. I took a breath. The kind that shakes without sound. My hands gripped the wheel. The fog thinned as I reached the far side of the bridge. The world beyond looked ordinary. Streetlights, empty streets, normal. I turned the dial once more. Silence, relief. But the memory lingered, the way the voice had known me. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Nothing but empty road and mist. Yet when I reached the next town, parked under the yellow glow of a street lamp, I could swear I heard it again. Soft, fading, calling my name. I don't think the radio will ever be truly silent, and I don't think I want it to be, because now I listen. Even when the car is off, even when the streets are empty, even when the night is quiet, and sometimes I think it's waiting. The bridge was quiet. The river below murmured softly, swallowing the sound of my own footsteps. Mist curled along the wooden planks, pale and slow. I had come here before, alone, at twilight, when the fog pressed against the banks like a living thing. And yet, tonight felt different. A soft tap. Tap, tap. I froze. The sound was behind me. I turned slowly, letting my eyes wander over the pale outlines of the railing. Nothing moved, but the air had changed. Colder now. A whisper of frost slipping across the back of my neck. I walked again, each step deliberate. Wood creaked beneath my weight. A rhythm formed, a beat against the silence. Tap, tap. It came again. Slower this time, deliberate. I paused, listened. There, just behind me, soft, careful. I told myself it was the wind, the board settling. But my breath hung in small clouds before my face, and even the fog seemed to lean in, watching. The bridge narrowed ahead. A single lamplight flickered faintly, barely cutting the haze. Shadows stretched long and thin, brushing the water. Another step, soft and patient. Closer now. Closer than it should have been if it were only the wind. I tried to move faster. My feet slapped the boards, splintering the quiet. And yet, the steps matched me. Tap, tap, tap. I stopped again, heart slowing, though my chest ached with it. Breath ragged, I dared a glance over my shoulder. Empty, nothing but fog. But I knew. I could feel it. A presence, pale and patient, shifting in the mist. I pressed on. The bridge seemed to stretch farther than it had minutes before. Railings disappeared into the haze, water swallowed the edges. Tap. A pause. Another tap. I could hear the wood groaning, small, aching sounds under invisible weight. My hands brushed the railing, rough and damp. Something trembled just beyond my reach. The air changed again. A scent, faint, earthy, like wet leaves and smoke. It wound around me, curling inside my chest. I tried to speak. "Who's there?" No answer. Only the fog and the pause between breaths. Softly, almost lovingly, the steps followed. Not hurried, not threatening, just there. I stopped at the center of the bridge. The lamplight flickered, shadows twisting across the boards. I could feel a figure now, just beyond the mist, keeping pace with my stillness. The river sighed below. Something shifted behind me. A brush of movement like fabric against wood. I dared not look. I could not. Tap, tap. A whisper of wood, then silence. The fog pressed close, curling around my ankles. I moved again, careful, soft. Every step measured. And always. The steps followed. The bridge seemed endless, stretching farther into the gray. The lamplight trembled once more, throwing long shadows that danced like living things. I reached the far side, where trees began to gather, pale trunks shivering. I stopped, breath fogging the air. No sound but the river, slow and patient. And yet, I knew the steps had not left. They waited. I turned once. Nothing. Only the mist, thick and patient, curling where a figure might have been. I took another step, and felt it then, faint, almost tender, brushing the back of my shoulder. I didn't look. I didn't move faster. I walked off the bridge, letting the fog swallow the sound of my feet. The river murmured below. Mist clung to the trees. And somewhere behind me, soft steps. Continued, I could feel them. Always just behind. Always waiting, patient as the fog itself. The night was quiet now. But I could not shake the rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. And when I finally reached the path leading back to my car, I realized the steps had stopped. Yet the memory lingered. Soft, steady, patient. As if the bridge itself had breathed them into me, and they would follow, always, whenever I walked too close to the fog. The fog pressed against the headlights like a hand. I could barely see the edges of the bridge. The asphalt curled ahead, impossibly. The guardrail, it was there, then it wasn't. One moment, a pale strip of metal lining the road. The next, nothing. I slowed, my tires humming against the wet surface. Every turn felt wrong. My eyes tried to follow the road, but the fog swallowed the lines. A soft wind stirred the mist. It carried a rustling from below, somewhere deep in the shadows. I thought I saw movement where the water should have been. I told myself it was a trick. Fog and reflection, the bend in the bridge. But the space where the rail should have been stretched into nothing. I gripped the wheel tighter. The road twisted again, sharper than it should. A flash of white, pale light reflecting off something just at the edge. I leaned forward. The guardrail reappeared, solid for a heartbeat, then dissolved like smoke when I blinked. My pulse thumped loud enough to drown out the quiet hum of my engine. The mist felt alive. It slithered over the asphalt, curling around the tires. I couldn't tell if I was moving forward or if the bridge was moving beneath me. The lines of the road bent. The sky had no shape. A shadow slid across the surface of the water. No ripples, no splash. The headlights caught it, just for a moment. A figure kneeling on the vanishing rail, staring. Pale, still, waiting. I blinked, and it was gone. The road was empty. Only fog and asphalt and the uneasy hum of the tires. I tried to steer toward the solid sections. The rail appeared again, then vanished under my gaze. Each turn became a question. Where was safe? Which side would open to nothing? The bridge groaned beneath me, a soft, hollow echo like something breathing far below. I wanted to call out, but my voice was swallowed before it left my throat. A mist-shrouded curve appeared. I could see the rail, or a suggestion of it, glinting faintly. I aimed the car, and my tires whispered over metal that might have been solid, and then the road split. One path vanished into white fog. The other twisted impossibly upward. Neither felt real. Neither promised safety. I froze. My reflection in the rear view shimmered. My eyes were pale, my hands trembling. I wasn't sure if I'd moved forward or if the bridge had turned beneath me while I was still. A soft scraping at the side of the car. I looked. Nothing. The guardrail shimmered back into place on the far side. I followed it instinctively. And it dissolved beneath the headlights as soon as I leaned my weight into the wheel. Time bent. Minutes stretched. The bridge curved again, the fog swallowing the far end. I thought I saw another figure, standing at the bend, tall, unmoving, silhouetted against the whiteness. I blinked. The shadow folded into the fog. I whispered to myself, slow and careful, "Keep moving! Keep moving!" The bridge shifted beneath my wheels, twisting in ways it never should. The road's edge disappeared. I pressed the brakes. Nothing changed. My reflection caught in the mirror, a pale, unblinking face, and then the guardrail was there. Straight, solid, unbroken. I leaned into it, relieved, but the mist carried a smell I couldn't name. It lingered in my nose, clinging to the back of my throat. Cold, damp, metallic, and I felt it watching me from below, from the spaces the rail had vanished into. The bridge stretched out. The fog thinned, just enough to glimpse the lights of the town far away. I didn't know if I'd moved or if the town had moved closer. A soft sigh of wind touched my face. It sounded like a whisper. I turned the wheel and kept going, slow, careful. The vanishing guardrail never fully returned. Just fragments, hints of metal that might have been safe, and the fog. Always just ahead, waiting. I didn't dare look down. Not fully. Not until the bridge ended. Even now, sometimes, when I drive at night, I see it. The asphalt curling into nothing. The faint glimmer of a rail that isn't really there. And the mist, moving like it knows the way I should have gone. I steer gently, I whisper to myself, and hope the road remembers its shape long enough for me to follow it home. The fog pressed low over the forest floor. It clung to my ankles, soft and damp like a warning. I walked slowly. Each step sank into the fallen leaves. They made a muffled crackle, but I could hear something else. Above me, the branches swayed. I thought it was the wind. There wasn't any. A shadow shifted between the trunks. I froze. My breath came shallow. Something pale lingered just beyond my vision. Too high to be human, but too deliberate to be anything else. I told myself it was a trick of light. The sun was gone now. Twilight had fallen in silence. The leaves whispered under a hidden weight. Something watched from the limbs, and I knew it. A sense I couldn't shake, eyes staring just beyond focus. I stopped, pressed against a tree. Its bark was rough under my palm, grounding me, but grounding did nothing against the feeling. The shapes moved when I blinked, gone, then back again, always at the edge. I tried counting the steps I had taken. 1, 2, 3. The numbers dissolved in my mind. I wasn't walking anymore. I was drifting. The air tasted faintly metallic. A hum hung low, almost beneath hearing. I tilted my head, listening. Nothing should have been there, but I felt it between my ribs. A pulse not my own. Branches leaned closer. Not swaying with wind, leaning, watching. The silhouettes were human. Or very nearly. I whispered my own name. It sounded strange in the thick air. Not my voice. It returned, altered, quieter. A hint of breath behind the syllables. I moved again. Soft steps, careful, nearly merging with the rustle of leaves. But they followed, always following. A pale shape flickered across the upper canopy. Eyes white and unblinking. I blinked. They were closer. Closer than the branches should allow. I thought I saw a face. A full face, suspended in the tangle of limbs, watching, waiting. But every time I focused, it stretched. Like the forest was breathing, reshaping around me. Silence fell like a weight. Even the leaves stopped. Even the hum dissolved into nothing. And still I could feel them. Eyes tracking. Shadows breathing. I crouched near a moss-covered stone. Fingers sank into the wet green. I could hear the wetness of their gaze. I wanted to leave. I couldn't find the path anymore. The forest had folded inward. The shapes leaned nearer. I think one of them touched a branch, and the branch reached toward me like a finger. I jerked back. My heart hammered, loud enough to echo, but it didn't scare them off. The fog thickened. Every sound dampened to a ghost of itself. And then a single branch snapped above. Too deliberate. Too close. I ran without direction. Leaves slapped my face. Roots clawed at my ankles. Branches brushed my hair. As if testing, judging. I stumbled into a hollow. Fallen leaves swallowed my knees. I pressed my face to the earth. I couldn't see. I couldn't breathe fully. I only listened. A whisper floated through the mist. Not words, not sound as we know it, just awareness, a presence, eyes, everywhere. I didn't move for a long while, and then I dared to look up. Branches, pale shapes, blended with fog, watching, waiting. I counted 3, 4, 5 shapes. I lost count. Shapes weren't counting anyway. The forest exhaled. It shifted, softly, almost politely, and the shapes receded just enough to let me breathe. I left the hollow slowly. The fog clung, but the eyes had slipped behind. I didn't look back, but I could feel them in every peripheral glance. I could feel them when I blinked. Night fully claimed the trees. The moon a pale smear through leaves. I know they are still there, leaning, watching, just beyond vision, and I walk on. Careful, soft, because even in the silence I am not alone. The bridge was quiet tonight. Frost clung to the edges of the railing. My breath came out in pale clouds. The river beneath whispered. Or maybe it hummed. I couldn't tell if it was the water or me. I stepped forward. The boards groaned softly. Soft footsteps behind me, too light to belong to anyone. Across the bridge, the world felt different. The trees leaned at impossible angles. Their branches scratched the air in slow, deliberate patterns. I recognized the path, or at least I thought I did. But the bench by the oak was closer than it should be, and the fountain was silent, frozen in a stillness that smelled of wet stone and cold metal. A hum vibrated through the air. Not loud, not sharp, but it filled the spaces between my thoughts. A resonance that made my chest tighten. The street lamps flickered. Light bent around them, making shadows stretch sideways. I could see the cobblestones ripple like water frozen in motion. I touched a railing. It felt warmer than it should, almost pulsing. The wood whispered under my fingers. I wanted to pull away. I didn't. A dog barked somewhere far away, but it echoed. Too close. And then it stopped, leaving a hollow that pressed against my ears. I walked on. Every step felt like crossing a thin membrane. The air smelled of ozone and wet leaves. I shivered. Not from cold. The houses on the street looked familiar, but their windows stared back like empty eyes. The doorways twisted just slightly, as if someone had taken the frames and stretched them. I stopped. Familiar landmarks should comfort me. Instead, they mocked me. The bakery where I used to buy bread now had letters that didn't belong. Rustling came from the hedges, but the wind didn't move them. I held my breath, listening to the static hum under everything. It filled my skull. I wanted to call out. My voice stayed buried. Only the hum answered me, soft, persistent, alien. I reached the park at the end of the street. The fountain gurgled, but no water moved. The swing swayed, but there was no wind. A fog curled along the ground, thick and white. I knelt, touched the fog. It burned cold. It tasted faintly metallic on my tongue. I turned to leave. The path behind me had shifted. My footprints were gone. Everything looked new, yet strangely worn. The hum grew louder, or maybe closer. I felt it in my chest now. Each beat matched it. A slow, pulsing echo. Shadows flickered along the edges of the park. They weren't shaped like trees or benches. They moved in impossible rhythms. I blinked. They were gone. A door appeared, leaning against the side of the old library. It hadn't been there before. Paint peeled in ways that made the grain look like veins. I touched it. It shivered under my fingers. Through the door, I glimpsed the world beyond. It was bright. Too bright. Colors that didn't exist. Shapes that should have fallen apart, held together by something alive. I hesitated. I wanted to step back, but curiosity rooted me to the ground. The hum became a whisper, soft, insistent. It said nothing I could understand, and yet I felt it pull me forward. I crossed, and the far side was wrong. The fountain had reversed. The bench floated a few inches above the grass. Even the fog seemed heavier. A bird called somewhere. Its song was familiar. Wrong, twisted, incomplete. I realized slowly, painfully, this place was not real. It mimicked reality. Every detail was slightly off, just enough to unsettle the senses. The hum pressed against my ears again. I tried to breathe it away. It stayed, constant, inescapable. I walked. The air tasted thicker here. Footsteps echoed where none should be. Shadows followed, but they didn't belong to me. I stopped at the edge of the path, looked back. The bridge was gone. The world I knew vanished behind a wall of pale light and static hum. I realized then, the other side isn't real, and I'm not sure I'll ever find my way back. I swallowed. A soft, metallic tang filled my mouth. The hum wrapped around me. I shivered, alone. The bridge waited under a blanket of fog. Damp air clung to my skin. The wood beneath my feet smelled of wet pine and rust. A whistle drifted along the planks. Soft at first, like breath escaping through a cracked window. I froze. It repeated, matching the rhythm of my heartbeat. My own breath mingled with it, slow, uneven. A thread of panic tugged at my chest. The fog thickened. It crawled over the railing, spilling into the gaps. I could barely see the river below. Only pale light reflected on the wet surface. Trembling, the whistle shifted. Higher now, lighter. It followed my steps exactly. I tried to turn away. The sound bent around me. Closer. Intimate. I felt the wood pulse beneath my toes, a vibration that mirrored the hum in my chest. Every nerve prickled. Rustling came from somewhere beneath the fog. Not wind, not leaves. Something alive. I took a step forward. The whistle changed again. It mimicked me perfectly, my movement, my breathing. I stopped. It waited. My hands brushed the railing. Cold, wet, alive. A fine mist settled in my hair, in my lungs. The whistle lingered in the back of my throat. A hollow echo I couldn't place. I wanted to call out. My voice stuck somewhere between my chest and lips. Only the whistle answered. Soft, seductive, insistent. Shadows danced on the water. They weren't my own. They moved with impossible grace, just at the edge of vision. I blinked. They were gone, but the air still hummed. The fog pressed against my skin. It smelled faintly metallic. A rustling followed me. I could hear soft footsteps in time with mine. Or maybe I imagined it. I leaned over the railing. The river stared back, black and endless. The whistle rose, stretching like a thread of wind. It curved around my head, through my ribs. A lure I couldn't resist. I walked forward. The planks creaked. The fog tightened. I felt its cold fingers on my neck. Breath quickened. The whistle followed. A reflection flashed in the water. My face, or something like it. Distorted, hollow-eyed. It smiled when I didn't. I shivered. The fog swirled faster. It obscured the far end of the bridge. A pale glow hovered in the distance. Soft, inviting. I felt drawn. I tried to resist. My legs moved anyway. The whistle fell into step with me. Each note a finger trailing along my spine. The wind shifted. It carried a taste of wet metal and old leaves. The planks moaned. Or maybe the bridge itself was whispering. I could no longer tell the difference. Soft footsteps echoed beside mine. Never touching. Always just behind. A shadow stretched over the railing. Too long, too fluid, I stopped. The whistle paused. A silence thicker than fog wrapped around me. I could feel it in my chest. A slow pulse. The pale light at the end of the bridge quivered. I took a breath. It smelled like ozone and something old. I exhaled. The whistle resumed, gentle, coaxing. I walked again, closer now. The fog thinned just enough to reveal a curve in the path. The end of the bridge, or so it seemed. The whistle rose one final time. Mimicking me, always mimicking me. It vibrated through my teeth, through my bones. I realized I wasn't alone, and I had been following it willingly. A cold, wet mist wrapped around my ankles. It pulled at me, soft but unrelenting. The pale light shimmered. The river hummed. The whistle waited. I stepped forward. The fog swallowed the bridge behind me. Soft footsteps faded into nothing. And I kept walking. Alone. Drawn by the sound I couldn't resist. The fog pressed against the bridge again. Thick, heavy, almost breathing. Every step felt like wading through cotton soaked in ice. I glanced behind me. The streetlights flickered dimly. No cars, no movement. Even the soft hum of tires had vanished, as if the world had never existed beyond this bridge. Minutes stretched. Or hours, I couldn't tell. My watch ticked once. Then nothing. The hands frozen, pointing at a time that wasn't mine. The planks beneath my feet pulsed, a subtle rhythm that matched the heartbeat in my chest. Rustling came from the fog, slow, deliberate, almost deliberate in its teasing. The bridge seemed endless, curving into shadows that weren't there moments ago. Each railing I touched felt warmer, then colder, in the span of a breath. I heard a soft sigh behind me. Turned quickly. Nothing. Only the fog curling in thick coils, smelling of wet stone and mildew. Footsteps appeared beside mine. I hadn't made them. They matched my pace, slow, unsteady. Then they stopped. I tried to call out. Air caught in my throat. Only my own shallow breathing answered. The river below shimmered. Black, reflective, endless. It trembled, but there was no wind. No movement. A sense of waiting pressed on my ribs. I stumbled forward. The bridge seemed to elongate with every step. The fog grew denser. It filled my nose, my mouth, my ears. I swallowed. It tasted faintly metallic. I tried to look behind me again. Nothing but empty space. No lights, no shapes. The world I knew was gone. Time became a tangible thing. Thick, viscous, impossible to push against. Each second stretched and folded over itself. My legs moved, but my mind felt trapped in molasses. A shadow flickered at the edge of the fog, too large to be a bird, too fluid to be a person. It drifted with the mist, rising and falling, but never approaching. The railing vibrated beneath my hands, soft, like a pulse from some distant heart. I realized the bridge itself was alive, or that I had been trapped in it all along. Footsteps echoed again. Behind me? Beside me? I couldn't tell. Each step seemed to come from nowhere, yet somewhere all at once. I breathed, felt the fog invade my lungs. It filled me with the weight of all missing minutes, all vanished cars, all vanished streets. I looked down. Water black as oil reflected my face. Not quite mine. Eyes hollowed slightly, stretched thin. It blinked, or did I? The hum returned. Low, subtle. It merged with the creak of the boards. The pulse of the fog, a rhythm I couldn't escape. I moved faster, or thought I did. The bridge remained endless, planks stretching beyond sight, the fog clinging like wet wool, the air thickened, suffocating. It smelled of iron and wet leaves. A metallic tang lingered on my tongue. I swallowed. My throat burned, the world behind me, completely erased. No footprints, no rails, no sky. Just fog and the unyielding bridge. I paused. Closed my eyes. The hum wrapped around me. Each beat of my heart stretched out loud and slow. When I opened them, the bridge still stretched ahead. The fog still thick. Time had no meaning. Only movement, only breath, only the slow, heavy pulse beneath my feet. I stepped forward again. Alone, caught in the bridge of lost time. The river waited under a pale, frozen sky. Fog curled over the water like a living thing. Air heavy with damp and decay. I leaned over the railing. The surface rippled beneath my fingers, cold, thin, smooth, like glass stretched too far. I saw myself, or at least I thought I did. The face staring back was hollow, empty eyes that swallowed light. The skin pale, but not quite mine. It blinked, or maybe I did. Its lips parted, forming shapes that weren't words. Beckoning, slow, deliberate, I stepped back. Heart pounding. The fog pressed closer, carrying the smell of wet iron and river mud. The hum beneath the bridge thrummed in time with my pulse. I glanced again. The hollow reflection moved independently. It raised a hand. Slow, fluid, curling my attention toward it. I felt an urge. A pull I didn't want to follow. Soft footsteps echoed behind me. Or was it mine? The air grew thicker. I could taste it on my tongue, metallic, old, suffocating. The river shimmered. The reflection smiled. A curve that belonged to no human face. The fog swirled around it. It seemed to float just beneath the surface, waiting. I tried to step away. The bridge stretched, elongated. Every movement echoed into nothing. Every breath fogged the air between me and the reflection. My hands gripped the railing, cold, wet, alive. The hollow eyes followed me as I moved. The water mirrored my every step. But not exactly. A shiver ran down my spine. The hum rose, low, vibrating through my chest, through my bones. The reflection tilted its head, silently laughing. I whispered to myself. Words caught in my throat. Only the fog answered. Only the rippling water repeated back the hollow shape of my own face. I tried not to look, but something drew me. A pull deeper than gravity, deeper than reason. The reflection's hand waved again, patient, insistent. The river smelled stronger now, rot and rain and iron. It filled my nose, my lungs, my mind. I tasted it when I exhaled. I knelt at the edge. My own reflection hovered, hollow, beckoning. I reached a hand toward it. Cold water lapped against my fingers. Or was it the fog? The bridge moaned beneath me. Footsteps echoed. Or perhaps the reflection moved on its own. It leaned closer, tilting the water like a canvas. Its hollow eyes burned in the pale light. I tried to blink. I tried to look away. The air wrapped around me. A quiet, suffocating weight. The reflection waited. I tasted fear in my mouth. Sharp, metallic. The hum thrummed louder. It seemed to speak, low, almost alive. I stepped back. The reflection followed. Ripples distorted its hollow face. It beckoned still. No sound, just presence. I turned, looking down the fog-covered bridge. The planks stretched into nothing. No end, no escape. Only soft footsteps echoing with mine. The reflection stayed in the water, silent, patient, waiting for the next step I didn't know I'd take. I swallowed. The metallic taste lingered. Fog clung to my skin, alone, breath shallow, pulled toward a hollow reflection that should not exist. I breathed, and the river blinked back. The bridge curved into fog. A pale light clung to the mist, washing the wood in silver. Air heavy with damp, smelling faintly of river mud and wet metal. I saw it then. A figure, pale, motionless. Where the bridge bent, it waited. I froze, breath shallow, every nerve alert. The fog pressed close, curling around my ankles, drifting into my hair. I stepped forward. The figure did not move. And yet, I felt its gaze follow me. Every step I took echoed unnaturally, stretched long and hollow, vibrating along the planks. The wind shifted. It carried a faint scent of rust and old cloth. I could almost hear fabric brushing the air. The figure remained, silent, still unwavering. I tried to look away. Curiosity, dread, and a pull I could not resist. The bridge seemed longer than before, stretching into nothing. The fog thickened, curling against my skin, cold and wet. Footsteps sounded beside me. Or was it behind? Each one matched mine, but came from nowhere. A whisper of movement in the mist. A shadow sliding along the curve of the bridge. The figure remained. Its outline pale, too faint to touch, yet solid enough to feel in my chest. A weight settled there. A presence that pressed against my thoughts. I reached for the railing, cold, damp, slightly trembling under my fingers. The hum beneath the bridge thrummed in rhythm with my pulse. The fog pressed heavier, filling my nose and lungs, metallic, wet. I stepped again. The figure did not move, but I could sense it shift in response to me. A subtle echo in the fog, a vibration in the boards, a soft pulling in my chest. The river beneath shimmered black. It reflected nothing but pale fog, and yet the figure appeared twice. Once on the bridge, once in the water's stillness, hollow bending reality around it. Soft rustling came from somewhere. Leaves, fog? Footsteps? I could not tell. The echo followed me, then vanished. Then returned, slower, heavier, deliberate. I stopped. The figure remained. Still. Silent. Watching. Waiting. A sudden breeze carried the taste of iron, sharp, cold, filling my mouth and lungs. The hum rose, low and insistent. I shivered. My hair stood on end. I took another step. The bridge stretched further than it should. The figure shifted just slightly. A lean, a tilt, almost imperceptible. But enough, I realized then. I was not moving alone. The fog, the bridge, the air itself, all seemed complicit. Every breath, every heartbeat, every step, mirrored, followed, measured. The figure did not speak. It did not blink. But I felt its intent, watching me, waiting, pulling, patient, unmoving, soft, pale light bent around it. The fog swirled, curling into shapes my mind could almost name. I blinked. The shapes vanished. Only the figure remained. I stepped again. The planks beneath groaned under imagined weight. Each step echoed twice, thrice, stretched and hollow. The air smelled of wet wood, of rust, of river decay. The figure remained. It did not move. And yet I felt it behind me. I felt it beside me. Every nerve alive, every hair raised, every breath shallow, I swallowed. The metallic taste lingered. The fog pressed close. I could no longer tell where I ended and the bridge began. The echo of my own steps blended with the waiting figure's presence. I walked slowly. The curve ahead remained. The figure remained. Silent, watching, waiting, I exhaled. The fog shifted with the breath. The figure did not flinch. It simply waited alone on a bridge that stretched forever, with a presence that mirrored, measured, and followed. Every step echoed unnaturally, and I could not stop moving. The bridge groaned beneath me. Metal joints flexed, stretched, and sighed. Fog hung low, heavy and damp. The air smelled of rust and wet wood. I stepped forward. Boards shivered underfoot, cold and unsteady. A soft hum seemed to pulse from the beams. I could feel it in my chest. Shadows stretched in the fog, curving along the railings, curling over the gaps. The pale light trembled across wet metal. It made the rust glint like dull fire. A sudden shiver ran through me. Something brushed my shoulder. No shape, no weight, only the cold, static pressure of it. I froze. Breath shallow, shallow enough to hear it in my ears. The hum thickened. It vibrated in the fog, in the boards, in my bones. The bridge bent away in impossible curves. I could see the rails twist and stretch toward the mist. Every step echoed twice. Soft, deliberate, haunting. The metal groaned again. Rust flakes drifted down like ash. I reached out, fingertips grazing the railing. Cold, sharp, fragile. Silence followed the touch. Thick, heavy, like fog pressing in. Every sound seemed swallowed. Only my heartbeat remained. I felt it again. The pressure on my shoulder. Cold and fleeting, yet unmistakable. I dared not turn. The fog seemed to swallow my reflection. The air smelled stronger now. Iron, wet leaves, something older, something decayed but alive. It clung to my skin, to my lungs. I stepped forward. The boards beneath moaned with my weight. The rails shivered under invisible fingers. The fog curled higher, swallowing the curve of the bridge. Soft footsteps echoed beside mine. Or behind me. I couldn't tell. They didn't belong, but they matched the rhythm of my own. The pale light caught the rust again. It glimmered briefly, then vanished. I reached out again. The metal felt fragile, almost pulsing. The hum rose in my chest. Slow, steady, insistent. I swallowed. The metallic tang coated my tongue. The pressure came once more. On my shoulder. I flinched slightly. No shape, no hand. Only the sensation of being followed. The fog thickened further. It pressed against my legs, my arms, my neck. The bridge groaned under some unseen weight. Or maybe it was me. I moved forward. Every step measured, slow, deliberate. Soft echoes followed. The rails vibrated faintly under my fingertips. A shiver passed through my spine. The hum became a low whisper. It hummed with the boards, the rust, the fog. I could feel it tracing me, watching, waiting. I paused at the curve. The fog swirled, thick and suffocating. The bridge stretched beyond sight. Every step forward felt like moving through liquid. I felt the shoulder again. Cold, slight, unseen, impossible. And yet, undeniably there, the boards groaned once more. Rust flakes fell, glittering faintly in the pale light. The hum lingered, vibrating in my chest. Soft footsteps echoed, distant but close. I breathed slowly. Fog curling into my mouth, filling my lungs. Alone. And yet, I was not. The bridge waited. The rust waited. The unseen presence lingered. I stepped forward again. The curve loomed ahead. The fog swallowed everything behind me. Soft, cold, insistent. I was moving through silence and rust. Alone. The toll booth waited in the fog. Cold metal, peeling paint, and silence. Air damp with the smell of rust and wet asphalt. I approached slowly. The boards creaked beneath my boots. Fog swirled in soft, heavy coils. The ledger lay open. Pages fluttered as though caught in a wind that didn't exist. Ink blurred in the pale light. Names, numbers, dates, none familiar, yet all somehow familiar. I leaned closer. The air tasted metallic, sharp. The ledger shivered under my fingers. Cold, almost alive. A hum rose faintly from the floorboards. The fog pressed against the glass. Soft droplets slid down the window, dripping onto rusted metal. I could feel the toll booth breathing. Slow, deliberate, patient. Pages turned themselves, slowly, deliberately. Each flip echoed, hollow, stretching into the distance. I imagined footsteps, soft and unsteady, keeping pace with the pages. I reached to touch a page. The paper shivered beneath my fingertips. Ink swirled, forming letters that dissolved before I could read them. A faint smell of old paper and decay filled my nose. The wind outside whispered through the cracks. Or was it the toll booth itself? A creaking, low, deliberate, like joints bending under some weight. I stepped back. The ledger kept moving. The pages rustled like soft, desperate sighs. The hum in the floorboards pulsed with my heartbeat. The fog outside thickened. It wrapped around the booth, curling in like fingers. The pale light bent along the glass. Shadows stretched and twisted against the walls. I heard a whisper. No words, just the impression of sound, echoing from nowhere. It made the ledger tremble again. I swallowed. The metallic tang lingered on my tongue. Cold air pressed in on my shoulders. The toll booth seemed alive, waiting, patient. I looked closer at the pages. Names blurred and shifted like reflections in disturbed water. Dates moved forward and backward. Numbers looped endlessly. A ledger that counted nothing, and everything. The fog seeped inside. A tendril brushed my arm, wet and cold. I flinched. No one was there. Yet the sensation lingered. I stepped back. The hum grew, low and insistent. I could feel it in my chest, in my bones. Every heartbeat mirrored the flipping of the pages. The ledger turned faster, almost urgent, yet silent, no wind, no hands. The booth seemed to hold its breath, waiting, always waiting. I could smell the rust rising from the floor. It mingled with the paper, the damp, the metallic air. The toll booth loomed in the fog, small, abandoned, infinite. I stepped away. The ledger kept moving. Pages flipping, names and numbers curling, blurring. I realized then, it was not meant for me to read. I breathed slowly. The fog pressed tighter, wrapping around my legs, my arms, my chest. Soft footsteps echoed in rhythm with the flipping. I could feel them trailing, always just behind, never touching. The hum faded, leaving only the rustle of paper. The booth waited. The ledger waited. Time bent inside that small, abandoned space. I turned, walked into the fog. The toll booth disappeared behind me, but the pages kept turning. I could feel them counting, always counting, waiting. The fog lay thick across the bridge, cold, damp, curling into every joint of wood and metal. The air smelled of wet iron and river rot. Shapes moved in the mist, curves and twists with no clear outline. They shifted just beyond the pale light, alive, deliberate. I froze. A soft hum rose beneath the planks, low, insistent. The fog wrapped around my ankles, damp and pressing. Breath shallow, uneven, I took a step. The shapes responded. A coil of shadow twisted at the edge of my vision. I turned. Nothing. The mist swallowed it. A rustling moved alongside me, soft, slithering. Not wind, not leaves. Something alive but formless, brushing the edges of my awareness. I reached for the railing. Cold, wet, alive. The hum pulsed through it, through me. The shadows twisted again. I moved. Every step felt mirrored, echoed. The shapes stretched and bent toward me. I couldn't locate a source, couldn't find where they began or ended. A sudden shiver ran down my spine. The fog thickened, curling higher, curling in. It smelled of wet earth and rusted metal. My breath hung visible in the heavy air. Soft footsteps echoed. Behind me? Beside me? I couldn't tell. Every movement I made seemed followed, measured, mirrored. The shapes twisted closer. They didn't touch, yet I felt them on my skin. Cold, wet, ephemeral. A brush of static like an electric pulse through the fog. I blinked. They shifted again. Angles bent impossibly. They moved with intent, deliberate, patient. I realized then I wasn't alone. I had never been alone. The railing vibrated under my fingertips. Soft, subtle, alive. The hum merged with the twisting shapes. It wrapped around me, pressing through my chest, my lungs. I tried to step backward. The fog thickened. The shapes moved in tandem. Edges blurred, shadows bending around nothing and everything. I couldn't see them clearly, couldn't escape them. Rustling came from every direction. The air was thick with scent, wet leaves, metal, decay. The shadows whispered in absence, intent without form. I paused. The shapes froze for a heartbeat, then twisted again. Every soft step I took echoed unnaturally, stretched and hollow. The fog swallowed the sound. I dared to look down. The water beneath reflected nothing but pale light and fog. And yet I felt movement there too. Something mirroring me, reaching, patient. A shiver ran through me. The hum pulsed stronger. I could feel it in my chest, my arms, my legs. The shadows pressed, close yet untouchable. I exhaled. Fog filled my mouth, my lungs metallic and damp. The shapes responded. Twisted again, curling toward me with no body, no source. I moved forward. Every step measured, slow, deliberate. Soft echoes followed, stretching impossibly. The bridge bent, lengthened, twisting with the shadows. I felt the fog brush my neck. Cold, wet, insistent. The shapes twisted closer, brushing the edges of perception. I could not see them clearly. Could not touch them. I paused again. The hum settled into a low vibration beneath my feet. The shadows hung. Patient, deliberate, formless, watching, waiting. I stepped once more. The fog curled higher, swallowing the edges of the bridge. Every soft step echoed, mirrored. I realized then I could never locate the source. The shadows existed everywhere, and nowhere, alone, wrapped in fog and whispering intent. I walked forward. The shapes moved with me, always, unseen, formless. The fog hung low, thick as wool. It clung to the bridge, curling around the beams, the railings, my legs. Cold air pressed against my skin, wet, heavy, suffocating. The wooden planks beneath me pulsed, slow, deliberate, like the heartbeat of the bridge itself. Every step I took seemed mirrored in the vibration, subtle, insistent. I paused. The fog twisted tighter around my chest. It smelled metallic, wet, ancient. I could feel it curling into my hair, my mouth, my lungs. The bridge seemed to breathe, soft rising and falling underfoot through the beams. A low hum vibrated through my bones. I swallowed. The metallic taste lingered. The air pressed closer. The fog moved with intent, curling against my arms and neck. Soft rustling whispered along the railings. Every creak, every groan, alive, deliberate. I stepped forward slowly. The planks responded beneath my feet. A subtle give, like the wood inhaling, exhaling with me. I could feel each pulse tracing my spine. Shadows stretched across the fog. They bent and twisted along the bridge, no source, no form. The air smelled faintly of iron and wet pine. I felt their presence brushing the edges of perception. Soft footsteps echoed. Or maybe it was the bridge itself, moving, breathing beneath me. Each step stretched unnaturally, mirroring the hum of the planks. I could not tell where I ended and the bridge began. The fog pressed tighter. It curled under my arms, into my sleeves, thick and suffocating. The wooden board seemed warmer than cold, pulsing in rhythm with the hum. I leaned on the railing, cold, wet, almost alive. I moved again. Every step measured, deliberate. The pulse beneath me slowed, then quickened. The fog tightened like hands around my chest. I could hear it breathe. Soft, wet, slow. A rhythm beneath the boards, between the railings, vibrating through the fog. Every inhale felt like it pressed against my lungs. Every exhale pulled me forward. Shadows twisted along the bridge. No edges, no source. They pressed close, almost tangible, brushing my skin, my hair. I felt them everywhere and nowhere. The hum deepened. I could feel it in my teeth, my jaw, through my chest. The board seemed to bend slightly with each pulse. The fog wrapped tighter, choking, curling, alive. I tried to step back. The planks pulsed in opposition, subtle, resisting. Every step echoed unnaturally, stretched, hollow. I realized then I was moving with the bridge. It dictated my pace, my rhythm. I paused. The fog swirled thicker, almost solid. It carried the scent of iron, decay, wet earth. Soft rustling brushed my arms, shoulders, neck. No one was there, and yet I felt it everywhere. I exhaled slowly. The bridge pulsed beneath me, alive, patient, insistent. The fog pressed, pressing, wrapping, curling. Shadows twisted. The hum vibrated in time with my pulse. I stepped forward again. The boards gave beneath me, pulsing, alive. Every footstep mirrored in the vibration. Fog wrapped around my chest, suffocating, insistent. I realized then. The bridge was not a bridge. It breathed. It watched. It moved with me. I could not leave. I moved, slow, deliberate, through fog, through breath, through pulse. Shadows twisted without form. The bridge inhaled. The bridge exhaled. And I followed, alone, wrapped in fog and vibration, pulled forward by the breath beneath my feet. The bridge waited, patient, alive. The other side appeared slowly through the fog. Pale light spilled over wet ground, soft and muted. The air smelled of damp earth and cold stone. I stepped off the bridge. The boards groaned behind me once, then fell silent. The hum faded into nothing. Fog lingered in wisps curling at my ankles. Every breath felt heavier than the last. The mist smelled faintly metallic, faintly like the bridge itself. I looked back. The curve vanished into nothing. No shape, no shadow. Only memory of movement pulsing beneath my feet. I felt it then, a weight faint inside me. Something left behind. A part of me lost to the fog, the wood, the hum. The air pressed closer. Silence thick and suffocating. Soft rustling brushed past my arms. Not wind, not leaves. A memory of shadow, a presence that lingered. I took another step. The ground beneath was solid. Still, every step echoed strangely, stretched, hollow. The fog curled around my legs, insistent, reluctant to release me. The light was pale now, touching the wet pavement. It glimmered against small puddles, reflecting fractured shapes. Each reflection trembled, almost alive, almost aware. I exhaled slowly. Cold air filled my lungs, carrying the scent of damp stone and faint decay. The silence pressed in, heavy and patient. No hum, no heartbeat, only the weight of emptiness where part of me remained behind. Soft, distant rustling echoed. A brush of wind or shadow I couldn't place. I felt it at my back, lingering, patient. It wasn't fear exactly. It was recognition. Of something claimed, of something left. I moved forward, slow, deliberate. Each step measured, echoing faintly into nothing. The fog lifted slightly, pale shapes emerging at the edges. I could see the curve of the land, wet stones, bare trees. And yet, a memory pressed against me. The bridge's pulse. The wooden breath. The hum of shadows that had followed me. I stopped. The air tasted faintly metallic, cold and dry. I swallowed. The lingering weight inside me throbbed faintly. I glanced back once more. Nothing remained of the bridge I had crossed. No boards, no rails, no hum. Only fog curling faintly at the horizon. Only the hollow echo of myself. I exhaled. Soft footsteps carried across wet stone, mine alone, stretched and hollow. The fog peeled back slowly, reluctant, like a hand letting go. I felt a subtle pull from behind. A whisper of presence, fading into memory. I moved forward. Every sense alert, every breath measured. The fog thinned further. The pale light touched my face, and I realized I had crossed, but part of me remained. A fragment left behind in the pulse of wood, the curve of fog, the hum of shadow. I could feel it faintly, somewhere beneath my ribs, in the quiet corners of memory. Alone, I walked into the pale light. The other side waited, silent, patient. The bridge behind me gone. And yet, I knew I was never truly free. The air was cold tonight, a deep, wet cold that settled into your bones. I stood at the foot of the old bridge. Its wooden frame was a black scar against the gray. Sky autumn had stripped the trees along the riverbank, leaving their skeletons to rattle in the dark. The fog had been waiting for me. It didn't roll in. It simply arrived, filling the space between the trees, a silent, milky tide. It wrapped around my ankles as I took the first step onto the planks. A damp, clinging touch. The wood beneath my feet felt soft, not rotten, but yielding, like pressing on a sleeping muscle. I took another step and felt a slow, gentle rise against my soul, then a fall. A long, slow exhale. The fog tightened around my legs. It climbed higher, coiling around my waist, a cold, wet serpent squeezing the warmth from my body. Each breath became a little harder to take. The moist air filled my lungs, heavy and thick. I looked down at my feet, at the weathered, gray planks. In the pale haze of the moon, I saw it. A subtle, rhythmic movement. A gentle swelling, then a contraction. The entire walkway was breathing. My own breath hitched in my throat. This wasn't possible. I stood perfectly still, watching the wood pulse. A slow, steady rhythm, like the throat of a great, slumbering beast. The rough grain of the timber felt like skin-cool and strangely alive. Had to move to get off this thing, but the fog pressed in from all sides. It was no longer just mist. It felt solid, a padded, soundless wall. It swallowed the shape of the riverbank behind me. The world ended just a few feet. Away, in every direction, I forced my leg to lift, to take a step. Forward. The plank beneath my boots sighed, a soft, groaning release of air. The sound was not of wood, straining. It was organic, a sound from deep within. Another step, another muted groan. The pulse beneath my feet seemed to quicken, to match the frantic rhythm of my own heart. The fog curled around my chest, a suffocating blanket. My ears popped. The silence around me became a low, droning hum, the sound of blood rushing in my head, or the sound of the bridge itself. Ahead, through the shifting haze, I saw the midway point, the great central arch. It was darker there. The fog congealed into a solid mass. Something shimmered within it. A faint, sickly light, the color of a dying firefly. It pulsed in time. With the bridge's breath, I tried to call out, but the fog filled my mouth, muffling any sound before it could form. The only voice was the one in my head, screaming at me to run. But my feet were anchors, rooted to this living, breathing wood. The pale light in the center of the bridge began to brighten. It cast no beams. It simply glowed, illuminating the thick, churning fog from within. The hum grew, louder, not in my ears now, but in the air, a vibration that traveled up through the soles of my shoes, into my veins. The wooden planks were warm, now, unnaturally so, a feverish. Heat seeped through my boots. The entire structure was waking up. I could feel its attention turning, shifting towards the small, insignificant weight standing upon its back. The light pulsed once, a bright, painful flash that left spots in my vision, and in the silence that followed, a new sound, a soft, wet inhalation. It did not come from me. It came from the bridge, drawing the fog and the air and the very warmth from the world into its vast, unseen lungs. It held that breath. The world stopped. The humming ceased. The pulsing stilled. Then, a slow, deliberate exhalation. The fog around me stirred, shifting from a solid wall into 1,000 soft, caressing fingers. They brushed against my face, my arms, pushing me gently back the way I came, and the warmth from the planks faded. The wood beneath my feet was just wood again, cold and unyielding. The pale light in the center was gone. The hum was a memory. I stood there for a long time, shivering in the cold, quiet dark. The river below was silent. The trees were still. Just me and the bridge, waiting. The final step was the hardest. My boot left the last wooden plank and settled on the gritty soil of the far bank. The change was immediate. The terrible, breathing warmth was gone from my soles, replaced by the cold, hard earth. I turned to look. Back. The bridge was just a shape again. Dark geometry of wood and shadow in the mist. The fog around it thinned, unwrapping its tight coils from the structure, letting it breathe the cold night air. The pulsing light in its center had vanished. The low hum was gone. Only a profound silence remained. It should have been a relief to be off that thing, to have solid ground beneath me. But the silence here was different. It wasn't the absence of noise. It was a presence, a heavy, wool blankets smothering the world. The fog on this side was lighter, a gauzy veil hanging between the trees. I could see the outline of the forest, the sharp, black spikes of pine against the lesser dark. But there were no crickets, no rustle of unseen creatures in the undergrowth. The wind had died completely. The air was perfectly still and cold. Took a few steps forward. My footsteps made no sound. The dry leaves on the path should have crunched, but they yielded without a whisper, as if I was no longer heavy enough to break them. I brought a hand to my face, rubbed. My eyes, my skin felt numb, distant, like I was touching a photograph of myself. I felt lighter, hollowed out, as if some essential weight had been left behind on those breathing planks. I remembered the bridge's final, soft exhalation, the way the fog had pushed me, not with force, but with a strange, gentle finality. It wasn't pushing me away, it was keeping something in, and I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I looked down at my hands. They were pale in the gloom. My fingers looked familiar. But the feeling in them was wrong. Static numbness buzzed just under the skin. Sensation of absence. I tried to recall the sound of my own voice, just a simple word, hello, but my mind was quiet. The internal noise that was always there. The stream of thoughts and worries. It was muted, dulled, like a radio tuned to a dead station. That's when I understood the bridge didn't take a toll. It demanded an exchange, a piece of passage for a piece of yourself. I had paid with a memory, not a specific one, but the feeling of it, the warmth of a summer day from my childhood, the specific sound of my mother's laughter, the sharp, proud feeling of my first bike ride. The emotional color was gone, leaving only the black and white facts. I was on the right side, the safe side. The forest path led home. I could see the distant, warm glow of town lights through the trees, a sight that should have made my heart lift, but my heart felt quiet. The panic was gone. The dread had faded, replaced by a deep, settling calm, an acceptance. This was the price, and I had paid it. I took one last look at the bridge. It was just a bridge now, silent and still in the shallow fog, an ordinary structure of wood and nail. I turned my back to it and walked down the silent path, my footsteps making no sound. The memories in my head were just pictures in a book. I could see them, but I could no longer feel the sun on my skin or the joy in my chest. Had reached the other side, I was whole, I was safe. But the silence within me was now deeper than the silence in the woods, and I knew, with a cold and certain clarity, that I had left the best part of me behind, back there, on the bridge that breathes.